This fight is not over. Sorry, I know I'm getting ahead of myself. But despite the events of chapter 1049, which we're soon going to discuss in excruciating detail, I don't believe the reigning King of Beasts has been toppled. At least not yet. This probably won't come as a surprise to those of you who've been following my channel for some time, as the events of this week's chapter pretty closely align with the false victory I've been expecting. But before getting too far into the discussion, let me quickly say welcome to anyone new to the channel. I do weekly One Piece chapter reviews, theory videos, and discussions. So if you're interested, please consider subscribing. It really helps this channel grow, and I really appreciate your support. Okay, so now getting into the discussion, let's back up. There is much to be said about the apparent outcome of Luffy and Kaido's battle, but let's start at the beginning. In this week's installment of the Germa 66 cover story arc, we learn a fire has broken out in Montour's library, which allows Yonji and Niji to escape. Although Broly informed Cracker that Ichichi and Ryujin invaded Cacao Island, it seems like Oda might be intentionally misleading readers concerning the identity of the silhouetted attackers. It's worth noting Montour's laboratory appears to be in Whole Cake Island, while the invaders were most recently seen in Chocolate Town. So unless these silhouetted figures have very quickly made their way to the center of Tottland, it's possible there are two separate sets of invaders simultaneously attacking Big Mom's territory during her absence. Perhaps then Niji and Yonji's liberation was caused by this separate set of invaders, potentially Teach or some of his Titanic captains seeking the road poneglyph in Whole Cake Chateau. This is a topic I discussed in earlier reviews for the chapters involving Big Mom's battle against Law and Kid. Her Emperor status may be tarnished due to her apparent defeat, but individually she's still more powerful than the vast majority of pirates in the New World. This means that Big Mom could very quickly re-establish her status if left unchecked. Kaido said a few chapters earlier that he's already lost much of what he has been working to build on Onigashima these past 20 years thanks to the Straw Hats and their allies. Conversely, although Big Mom's reputation may be bruised by her defeat, because she's playing an away game and only brought Sparrow along for the battle, the resources which cement her Emperor status have been largely protected. That is, unless Blackbeard's crew manages to ransack Tottland and steal her road poneglyph during the battle on Wano. I think this 1-2 punch, losing to Law and Kid, and her territory being destroyed, could significantly diminish Big Mom's Emperor standing without actually removing her as a credible threat, which could even drive her to Elbaf in an attempt to rebuild her collapsing empire. While this is largely speculative, the sudden fire on Whole Cake Island, with no direct connection to the silhouetted invaders in Chocolate Town, makes me even more suspicious that Broly identifying Ryujin and Ichichi last week was a misdirect, and that there's more going on here than has yet been revealed. But now let's move into the actual chapter because there's a lot here we need to talk about this week. We again open on the rooftop clash between Luffy and Kaido, continuing the now 3-chapter long DBZ style standoff as both warriors put their full force behind their apparent final attacks. Kaido commends Luffy's tenacity, but the statement which follows is both fascinating and incredibly important. He insists that Luffy's incapable of changing the world, which is rather remarkable. This is a topic I've discussed in depth in several past chapter reviews and theory videos, and we'll get back to this point toward the end of the review, but Kaido's statement has some important implications about what it means to be JoyBoy. In fact, as we'll discuss in a few moments, many aspects of Kaido's character touched on this week were brought up in my most recent theory video about Kaido's yet to be fully revealed backstory. But what's notable here is Kaido's desire to change the world, which was already brought up during his conversation with King in chapter 1035. We get a much better sense of the world Kaido wishes to create through this week's chapter, but the context clues have been there all along. As I said, I have an entire video on this topic, but this again speaks to the fact that to be JoyBoy, to inherit the will of the one who left One Piece behind 8 centuries earlier, means catalyzing a global transformation. JoyBoy was the world's champion for freedom during the Void Century, but for some reason he failed.
Oh, well, I tried to start a revolution but didn't print enough pamphlets, so hardly anyone turned up.
And his crew accepted their fate and left behind their message for those who will someday inherit their will. The willing acceptance and embrace of death in service of a higher ideal is reflected in those who carry the name D, as well as the symbol of piracy, the grinning skull or the Jolly Roger. As the song Bink Saki says, doesn't matter who you are, someday you'll just be bones. As I will soon elaborate on in an upcoming video, I believe JoyBoy was the world's first forgotten pirate king. The reign of the Lunarians from their land of gods atop the Red Wall, long before the Celestial Dragons, coupled with the Age of the Sea Circle calendar, indicates the existence of an evil oppressive force which has been at work since long before the Void Century. JoyBoy, as Pirate King, may have attempted to build a loosely affiliated nation of pirates patterned on the myth of Libertalia, which ultimately collapsed for yet to be revealed reasons. The ambitions of the emperors, Kaido, Big Mom, and Teach, represent dark, mirrored reflections of the world JoyBoy was trying to build, but Luffy has now arrived as his true successor, the one for whom Roger, JoyBoy, and his allies have been waiting for centuries. Simply put, JoyBoy is dead. He was a mortal man who lived a life of adventure and left behind his tale full of laughs, whose efforts to liberate the world proved unsuccessful, but a new dawn is now approaching. Kaido's desire to change the world is a reflection of JoyBoy's ambition, but is corrupted by his erroneous belief that strength is all that matters, and that survival of the fittest should be the only law of the land in the new world created by Roger and JoyBoy's successor. Kaido and Big Mom both desire to become the Pirate King, to fundamentally change the world, but their visions for what the transformed world would become are very different. Big Mom imagines a world where everyone lives in harmony and is free to partake in sugary indulgence, but of course the voracious appetite which underlies her ambition distorts her dream by extracting the souls of the very people with whom she wishes to joyously commune. Conversely, Kaido envisions a world of constant war, where the strong prevail over the weak and rise to the top. Anyone who submits admits their place in this pecking order.
Alright, maggots, listen up. Popo's about to teach you the pecking order.
And defers to the alpha at the top of the pack of beasts, is free to be part of Kaido's in-group, and challenge for dominance is constantly invited, with death completing a warrior's path. Kaido holds strength as the highest virtue, and envisions a world where the entire society is structured around its supremacy. Yet despite his adamant adherence to this twisted worldview, his emotions also seemingly betray his subconscious desire to be free from his own warped ideology, which was potentially foisted upon him by his dark mentor or by his society of origin. But remember, Kaido's worldview is fundamentally flawed. This is a topic we discussed earlier. As an embodiment of the shadow archetype, Kaido represents Luffy's dark potential. He desires the same things as Luffy, to find the One Piece and become the next Pirate King, to succeed Roger and JoyBoy. The One Piece world is in a darkened state and needs to be transformed, just as Kaido hopes to achieve. But the question, which can only be answered when someone at last discovers One Piece, is what form this new world is going to take. Unseating the world's oppressors will be no easy task. Luffy must succeed where both Roger and JoyBoy failed. Harder still will be the task of deciding what new societal structure will be built atop the rubble of the old, and the future Pirate King will play a pivotal role in helping reshape the world. Kaido erroneously envisions a world centered entirely on strength. Physical strength is of course necessary to overcome the very real dark forces which will not cede power without a fight, and to preserve the newly achieved peace at the end of the series. Yet Luffy's greatest virtue, as stated by Mihawk, is his ability to form bonds of fellowship wherever he goes. That's what truly makes him a worthy successor to JoyBoy, capable of guarding the dreams and visions of both the people of Wano and the rest of the world. It's certainly possible Luffy will simply overpower Kaido, but wouldn't this outcome only serve to reinforce Kaido's presently held false conviction, that the new JoyBoy must be the world's strongest? As we discussed, a reconciling of the hero and the shadow often entails recognition of the point where the latter went astray. Or in other words, for Kaido's will to be broken, he must recognize where he went wrong. What factor truly differentiates him from Luffy? What truly makes Luffy worthy of becoming JoyBoy is not the fact that he's going to best Kaido in combat, but that he can form bonds of fellowship with the people of Wano, that he's willing to put his own life on the line to protect the dreams of others. Luffy saw these qualities demonstrated by his positive mentor figure, red-haired Shanks, but Kaido had no such advantage. All of the influential figures in Kaido's life were either manipulative or abusive. Kaido's quest to become Pirate King and to succeed JoyBoy is doomed to failure, not because he's lacking in strength, but because he fails to understand strength must be tempered by kindness and compassion. Whatever lesson Kaido learned from his dark mentor has poisoned his perception of the world, and a lifetime of negative experiences has reinforced this teaching, and convinced him that genuine friendship is impossible for ogres like himself. Yet Kaido's true emotions, which only rarely bubble to the surface, betray his underlying subconscious desire to form genuine friendships, which will continue to elude him as long as he clings to his false belief that such bonds are impossible. Perhaps then the Akazaya Samurai, whom Kaido has repeatedly dismissed as weak and unworthy, the 9 shadows of Toki's prophecy, will be the key to Luffy's eventual victory. Luffy has already gone the distance with Kaido, proving himself a capable warrior, but what truly puts him over the top is his moral character and the bonds of fellowship he forms. Yes, it's very much a cliché and a common trope in shonen manga series, but the primary differentiating factor between Luffy and Kaido is the power of friendship. After this brief opening scene, we finally gain our first real look into Kaido's backstory, a topic which I've dedicated a not insubstantial amount of time to discussing over the past several months. What we received this week, however, isn't exactly a full flashback. Instead, Oda chose to show us a series of short vignettes covering roughly 30 years of Kaido's life in the span of 4 pages. While I still believe a full flashback is forthcoming, there was nevertheless a lot of really interesting information packed into these short scenes. Going through the flashback one scene at a time, at the top of page 3 we get our first glimpse of Kaido age 10. Notably, Oda applied a screen tone to the set of panels depicting the very earliest chapter in Kaido's flashback, evoking the sense that this scene is even farther back in time than he's willing to show us. As I asserted in my analysis video about Kaido's Dark Mentor, I suspect Kaido's formative years will be highlighted if we receive a full flashback. So the fact that we only got a very brief look at the young ogre, at least from my perspective, makes sense and reinforces my belief that more of Kaido's backstory will be revealed very soon. We see here that Kaido is already monstrously powerful at a young age, fighting as a child soldier. In the middle of page 3, the scene very quickly jumps forward 3 years to Kaido age 13. Here we learn that he was residing in the kingdom of Vodka, very appropriately named given his propensity for consuming large quantities of alcohol. But it's interesting to note that Kaido is the only ogre in these scenes, surrounded by humans. This suggests that although he was a resident or citizen of the Vodka kingdom, it's reasonable to conclude that ogres originate elsewhere. This is a topic I'm going to cover in depth in one of the upcoming sections of my Kaido video series, but I wonder if the ogres or Oni could have some historical ties to the ancient giants or the land of Wano, and I don't think that's ruled out by this week's chapter. Kaido told Yamato that ogres cannot be friends with humans, that people only wish to exploit their strength. Kaido fighting as a soldier from the age of 10 could have been compulsory. He could have been abused by the people of Vodka Kingdom as a child soldier fighting for their cause unwillingly. From this scene we learn that the Vodka Kingdom continuously wages war to raise the funds needed to pay the annual Celestial Tribute. The Celestial Tribute is itself rather interesting. While superficially the worst attribute of the tribute of gold paid to the world nobles is that it worsens existing disparities, the model established by earlier villains like Doflamingo, Crocodile, and Eneru suggests that Lord Imu, the world's secret ruler, demands these payments of gold and other resources to achieve his own goals, but that's a topic for another video. So what we see here is that Kaido was fighting as a child soldier from the tender age of 10 on behalf of the Vodka Kingdom. Given that he seems to be the only ogre among a nation of humans, leads me to believe he was perhaps recruited as a mercenary, willingly or otherwise. This ties into some of the points of discussion I brought up in my analysis of Kaido's character. In chapter 1025, Kaido told Yamato that ogres aren't meant to be friends with humans, that they're destined to rule others by strength, that those who pretend to be their friends only intend to exploit their strength. In turn, Kaido erroneously believes that the entire world should be centered on strength, and the events of this flashback scene reinforce my assertion that this belief or worldview was imparted to Kaido by a yet-to-be-revealed Dark Mentor figure. Perhaps this very important person from Kaido's past is the one who brought him or sent him to fight for the Vodka Kingdom. In any case, when the King of Vodka explains the purpose of their pillaging to raise funds for the Celestial Tribute, young Kaido demands to know why the world allows the nobles to rule over them. This suggests Kaido was already persuaded of his underlying worldview that the strong must rule the weak by the age of 13, before he became a child soldier for the Vodka Kingdom. This again suggests that Kaido's flashback will be centered on events even earlier in his life than depicted in chapter 1049. It's notable we didn't get a clear view of the Vodka King's face, perhaps because we're going to see how Kaido arrived at his present station in the not so distant future. Whether Kaido was recruited willingly or unwillingly to fight as a mercenary, it would seem they got more than they bargained for and thus decided to sell him off to the Marines to secure their seat at the Reverie. This incident interestingly parallels Mother Carmel's commitment to sell young Linlin off to the Marines. This continues the trend of the Marines and world government using tactics which are questionable at best and horrific at worst to fill the ranks of their military. We have recently seen Admirals Fujitora and Ryokugyu recruited through a worldwide draft, and also know the Giant Squad were enlisted as children. It'll be interesting to learn in the future if similar tactics were used to recruit powerful Marines like Aki Inu, Aokiji, Kizaru, Garp, and even Smoker. But focusing the conversation back on the Vodka Kingdom, nations which receive a seat at the referee table are able to better advocate for their people, so it's rather nefarious the world government leverages legislative representation to bolster the strength of its own military, which is then used to enforce the current oppressive regime's reign. This is another topic I've discussed previously, but these deeply entrenched cycles have increasingly come into focus as the series approaches its final saga, because changing this world will be tasked to the future Pirate King. It's not simply a matter of defeating an evil oppressor, but breaking this cycle, which continuously produces villains in the same mold. Kaido was deeply angered by being sold into military service as a political bargaining chip, leading to the first of his many infamous escapes from captivity. It's interesting to imagine that both Linlin and Kaido could have been Marines had things played out just a little bit differently. I even wonder if Oda could depict this what-if scenario in one of the dream illustrations he draws for the One Piece magazine. After seeing Kaido's first escape, we learn he made it a habit to willingly be captured when he was hungry, only to escape again after eating his fill from Marine rations, earning him a bounty of 70 million from the age of 13. We then jump forward 2 years to his first meeting with the Rocks Pirates on Full Lead or Beehive Island. It's interesting that his invasion seems to parallel Moria's attack on the fortress in chapter 925 to confront Blackbeard, considering Kaido was the one responsible for crushing Moria's ambition and eliminating the Gecko pirates. It would seem that despite already possessing a bounty, Kaido had not yet raised the Jolly Roger, as Whitebeard asked if he was interested in becoming a pirate before informing him that Rocks wanted a meeting. Thus, I quickly want to make note of one important distinction. During Kaido's introduction in chapter 795, the narrator tells us that Kaido was captured 18 times. We learn in chapter 1049 that between the ages of 13 and 15, Kaido would willingly be captured whenever he was hungry. But we also learn from this scene that Kaido did not become a pirate until the age of 15 when he joined Rocks. This means that the flashback does not explain Kaido's 7 previous defeats. The narrator told us that Kaido was defeated 7 times as a pirate. This means that these 7 defeats do not correlate to the 18 times Kaido was captured by the Marines. So we can then conclude that these 7 times Kaido was defeated must have happened after he joined Rocks. This will be important when we again talk about whether or not Kaido was actually defeated by Luffy in this week's chapter. In my character analysis, I suggested that on a subconscious level, Kaido has longed for the friendship and camaraderie he was led to believe are impossible for ogres like himself. I further suggested that when Kaido set out to sea, much like the Straw Hats, he became a pirate motivated to build those bonds of fellowship, which he unfortunately did not find among the crew he happened to join. Rocks may have been the dominant crew of the age, but were plagued by infighting. This makes a lot of sense as the crew is seemingly comprised entirely of leaders without any followers. Too many powerful and conflicting desires or willpowers gathered under one flag made for a volatile environment. We see in the present that despite their alliance and shared goal of discovering One Piece, Big Mom and Kaido have radically different visions for what the transformed world should become. The fact that these powerful pirates could be gathered under one banner for upwards of 6 years speaks to the strength of Zebek's willpower. Although Kaido wasn't able to find the genuine friendship he was subconsciously seeking by becoming a pirate, he did seemingly develop a deep respect for Rocks D. Zebek. As expected, however, we aren't given a clear view of Rocks in this week's chapter. I've said in the past that I didn't expect Kaido's flashback to show us Zebek or the God Valley incident, because they likely reveal key information about Shanks, Blackbeard, and Roger that Oda isn't yet willing to share. Accordingly, the scene quickly jumps forward 6 more years to the tail end of the Rocks era. We see a silhouetted figure, which may be Rocks D. Zebek, calling to Kaido from an open doorway as the crew set sail for God Valley. If this is indeed Rocks, though his appearance is obscured, this would be the first time Zebek actually speaks on panel. It's difficult to tell from a single line of dialogue, but the tone of the scene, coupled with the look on Kaido's face, suggests that Zebek was able to earn the respect of his subordinates. Although we haven't been formally introduced to rocks, much like Roger sharing many of Luffy's defining character traits, it seems like a safe assumption Xebec and Teach bear many similarities. Accordingly, it's likely that although his alignment was evil, Xebec was a charismatic and persuasive figure with a gravitational or magnetic attraction to those around him. I should note that I'm reading a lot into this very small line of dialogue, and it's not confirmed this character is even Xebec, but there's one more interesting detail to note. The silhouetted figure appears to be wearing what very much resembles the shape of Luffy's straw hat, which is heavily implied to have some yet to be revealed connection to the world's forgotten past. Now, Lin did wear a similar hat at this point in time, so this silhouetted character could simply be young Big Mom. But the reason I think it could be Xebec is that we've already seen Big Mom's face from the Rock's era depicted on panel, so it's unclear why Oda would choose to obfuscate or block out her appearance as a silhouette. Now obviously this wouldn't be Luffy's straw hat, which was in Gold Roger's possession at the time, but perhaps Xebec wore a similar type of hat or even a replica, knowing the original held some type of significance to JoyBoy. After all, it would seem that he had some arcane knowledge of the One Piece world, which prompted his attack on God Valley. Now, as I've detailed in the past, I'm personally inclined to believe Xebec was intent on acquiring Kaido's mythical fish fruit, which may have been held as a sacred treasure or even passed down among a particularly elite lineage of nobles on God Valley. But for all of the reasons noted earlier, we skip over the incident itself and jump forward to the aftermath, as news of Rock's collapse is spread throughout Pirate Island. It seems the government acted fast in controlling the narrative surrounding God Valley, as even in its immediate aftermath, Roger's involvement was unknown, with Garp receiving the sole credit for Xebec's downfall. We then jump forward another 10 years to Kaido, age 31, meeting with the Kurozumi clan elders for the first time. To get some perspective, though not explicitly noted, this scene takes place roughly 28 years before the present, around the same time Yamato was born. As noted in my video discussing Kaido's backstory, this is the same year that the Kurozumi plot unfolded in chapter 965, and Momo was born to Oden and Toki sailing aboard Whitebeard's ship. We see Kaido has partially assembled his crew by this point in time and devised his own Jolly Roger. This scene appears to take place aboard a ship, perhaps even Kaido's flagship, which very interestingly hasn't yet been seen on panel. In fact, he's the only emperor whose flagship hasn't yet been revealed, as we've seen the Red Force, Moby Dick, Saber of Xebec, and Big Mama Chanter. Kaido first making contact with Albert on Punk Hazard must have taken place during the intervening years between the God Valley incident and this meeting with Higarushi. Notable is Queen's absence. I previously suggested that perhaps Queen, like King, was recruited from Punk Hazard, but that now seems far more unlikely. We can't say with any degree of certainty, as this scene takes place a short time before Kaido's invasion of Wano, so Queen could very well be around at this time, even if he isn't depicted on panel. In any case, this scene confirms several details I brought up in earlier videos. First, we learn that Kaido's occupation was indeed invited by Higarushi, which makes a lot of sense. She told Orochi in chapter 965 that she had been outside of the land of Wano. The Kurozumi have indeed played the part of puppet masters and precipitated this conflict by inviting Kaido in order to exact their vengeance. I further speculated that the Kurozumi specifically chose Kaido because of historical ties between the ogres and the land of Wano, though that topic doesn't come up during Kaido and Higurushi's meeting. Notably, however, Higarushi persuades Kaido by parroting many of his own beliefs regarding the paramount importance of strength as the governing principle around which he believes society should be structured. This indicates Higarushi has some degree of insight into what makes Kaido tick, and thus was able to persuade him to join her uneasy alliance. Now there's potentially another layer here involving CP0, which I discussed in greater depth in my theory video dedicated to the connection between Kaido and the Kurozumi, so I won't go into too much depth in this video, but I'll provide a link if you're interested more on this topic. I will add, however, that the Kurozumi playing the part of puppet masters makes me less inclined to believe Orochi is actually dead, despite suffering his 8th decapitation in chapter 1048. As I said last week, there's a slight chance Orochi somehow manages to slither away, and I could certainly imagine a scouring of the Shire type scenario unfolding in the following action. Ultimately, this destructive cycle of abuse and hatred must be broken for Wano to truly heal, which must somehow involve reconciliation and reincorporation of the cursed Kurozumi clan. The Kurozumi elders committed a crime for which innocent parties like Kanjuro and even Orochi were persecuted. This in turn made them pliable to be radicalized to join Higarushi and Semimaru's cause. While Orochi has been thoroughly corrupted and must pay for his great many crimes, it's important Wano's new leaders do not hold all of those who bear the name Kurozumi responsible, else they risk repeating this cycle and creating another Orochi at some point in the future. And perhaps Otama will be a key part of this necessary reconciliation if she is indeed a member of the Kurozumi clan. Higarushi even references survival of the fittest, a phrase which in the real world originates from Darwinian evolutionary theory to describe the process of natural selection, which, as I've said, is held by Kaido as the paramount virtue. Kaido wants to create a world where the strong deservedly live and the weak deservedly die, a world of perpetual war. We then jump forward to an unspecified point in time after the Hour of Legends, as Kaido gives a speech to rally his troops on the live floor of Onigashima. He again proclaims his desire to create a world of perpetual war, and as I've noted in the past, it's clear Kaido views this as a noble end. From the brief glimpse of his childhood, it's clear the importance of strength above all else was instilled in him from a very young age, likely by a dark mentor figure. The injustices and abuses incurred by the weak only serve to reinforce this belief. Kaido, like all of those vying for the title of Pirate King, aims to fundamentally transform the world. Villains who wear the mask of the shadow archetype most often view themselves as the hero of their own myth. As Kaido told Yamato, life isn't a series of simple questions with simple answers. His incursion of Wano and oppression of its people is viewed by Kaido as a necessary means to achieve what he believes to be a noble end, a world restored to its natural order where survival of the fittest rightly holds sway. From Kaido's point of view, the weak, like the celestial dragons, will no longer be able to unnaturally oppress the strong in his animal kingdom, as he says he believes this world of war would represent true equality. In the final scene of this series of mini flashbacks, we then cut to a conversation between Kaido and King concerning JoyBoy, which reveals several important details, but very quickly I want to say that I really like the way Oda has developed the relationship between Kaido and his first commander over the past 10 or so chapters. I do wish we got to see more of this presented on panel in the present throughout the Wano arc, as we've really relied on these flashback scenes starting in chapter 1035 to gain a true appreciation for just how similar their bond is to the absolute trust shared between Luffy and Zoro. Here Kaido tells Albert that Yamato mentioned the name JoyBoy, though he doesn't know where she learned it from. Of course we know Yamato learned the name JoyBoy through Oden's journal, which Kaido doesn't know is in her possession. But more importantly, Kaido then describes JoyBoy as the man King is waiting for. It would seem that Yamato, reciting Oden's journal, informed Kaido of Oden's desire to open Wano's borders in preparation for JoyBoy's return. Oden further stated during the Hour of Legends that someday the borders would be opened, and implored his retainers, the Akazaya Samurai, to survive and help realize his dream. Kaido thus put two and two together and correctly concluded that the one who defeats him and forces the borders open will mark the return of JoyBoy. There's a lot to unpack here, but first I'll point out that Kaido was already occupying Wano by this point in time. He told Yamato that Wano is special and he wouldn't settle for ruling any other nation, but that belief isn't predicated on JoyBoy. Kaido did not select Wano because he's looking for JoyBoy. He reached this conclusion about JoyBoy's return at some point long after he first arrived in the land of samurai, even after the Hour of Legends, as Yamato was already in possession of Oden's journal, which was somehow rescued from the burning castle in Kuri by a yet-to-be-identified figure. Second, this scene implies a historical connection between the Lunarians and JoyBoy, as Kaido alludes to JoyBoy as the man Albert is waiting for, much like the minks, Kozuki, and fishmen. This further implies that Kaido likely first heard the name JoyBoy from King. This is important as thus far the name JoyBoy is only known to those who have read the poneglyphs. Robin and Oden both first learned the name JoyBoy from the Apology poneglyph in the Sea Forest on Fishman Island. Oden then shared this information with the Roger Pirates and King Neptune. Yamato also learned about JoyBoy through Oden's writing. Kaido first mentioned JoyBoy in chapter 1013, and at the time we didn't know how he learned about this name. Him being aware of JoyBoy without having read the poneglyphs or without having known any poneglyph readers was significant, but now it would seem that information came from Albert. This means that thus far, Albert, or King, is the only character in the series to know the name JoyBoy without having read the poneglyphs. From this we can extrapolate that the Lunarians must have some knowledge of JoyBoy that is not common to the rest of the world. I've already posted an in-depth theory video explaining the role I believe the Lunarians may have occupied in world history. with their fall potentially occurring centuries before JoyBoy's era at the end of the Age of Heaven, which marks year 0 on the current Sea Circle calendar. So I won't reiterate those points here, but this does further reinforce the idea that though the Lunarians occupied a so-called land of gods atop the Red Wall long ago, centuries before Marishwa was even constructed, they seemingly became allies with JoyBoy during the 100-Year Void. Albert may have backed the wrong horse by endorsing Kaido's bid to become Pirate King, but this would suggest that the Lunarians, much like the Fishmen, Minks, Kozuki, and possibly Giants of Elbaf, will be vital allies in the future war to liberate the One Piece world. Following this scene, we return to the present as Luffy and Kaido clash with full force in the skies above Onigashima. Interestingly, the last CP0 agent left standing has abandoned his 2 fallen companions, likely to join the fleet of government ships approaching offshore. It's unclear exactly what this suggests, though it would imply they believe the battle is at its end. I doubt the world government intend to alter course and are still intent on annexing the land of samurai in the wake of Kaido's impending defeat. It's interesting that no one inside the castle, including the Straw Hats, is fully aware of what's happening in the skies above, as Yamato and Momo are the only 2 direct witnesses to the battle. I really appreciate the detail that though the deluge from Zo brought by Raizo delivers salvation by extinguishing the burning castle, it also unintentionally destroys the remaining flame clouds holding Onigashima aloft, causing the island to suddenly plummet. Then, out of time, with the island in freefall, Momo finally makes flame clouds appear to cushion Onigashima's descent. As much as I like the way these events unfolded, I feel like Momo's moment of triumph could have been treated with a bit more fanfare, particularly given just how much time we have spent focused on his emotional turmoil and struggle to grow into the leader he's meant to someday become. This is likely a function of restricted panel space, but I certainly would have preferred to see a full-page spread, as Momo's big moment is sort of lost in this very busy scene, tucked away in a bottom right corner panel. Returning to our earlier conversation regarding those who wish to become Pirate King, desiring to reshape the world echoing JoyBoy's unrealized ambition, Kaido asks Luffy what type of world he wants to create. Luffy replies that he wants to make a world where all of his friends have enough food to eat. Now, I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but this is another topic I discussed in my Kaido character analysis video. Fitting with Luffy's character, Oda has consistently used food as a metaphor to demonstrate Luffy's maturation and growth into the hero the world demands. At the start of this story saga, on Fishman Island, Luffy said he likes heroes, but doesn't want to be one, because heroes share their meat. Yet Luffy has grown considerably over the past several hundred chapters. He ventured to Big Mom's land to feast, and then to Kaido's land of famine, and is now fighting to make Wano a land where there's enough food for everyone, a land where children like Tama won't go hungry. Luffy's now consciously fighting for everyone. This character growth is necessary, as Luffy will soon be tasked with a heavy burden. Although he's fought against despots like Crocodile, Eneru, and Doflamingo throughout his entire voyage, and the Straw Hats have consistently brought light to the dark places they visit, the future Pirate King must grapple with not only evil pirates, but entrenched systems which continually breed villains in the same mold. Goldie Roger, Odin, Rayleigh, Whitebeard, and others with some awareness of the world's lost history understood the true weight of what it means to take up JoyBoy's mantle, and the future Pirate King is going to play a pivotal role not only in beating up the bad guys who presently rule the world, but also in guiding the world toward a new dawn. Luffy is slowly maturing into the type of leader fit to lead such a revolution against the dark oppressive force which presently controls the One Piece world. This means that Luffy's desire to make the world a place where his friends don't go hungry is central to his motivation. It's what makes him a candidate to be JoyBoy. It's what makes him fit to become the Pirate King. Which makes me wonder just how closely this desire is tied to the yet-to-be-revealed dream that Luffy and Roger share. And on that note, we arrive at the final scene of this week's chapter, as Luffy's Bajrang Punch breaks through Kaido's Flame Dragon, makes contact, and sends Kaido crashing down to what Luffy described in chapter 1048 as the bottom of hell. And with that, it appears the very long war to liberate Wano has finally reached its conclusion, with Luffy toppling one of the 4 emperors widely regarded as the world's strongest living creature. The paper lanterns carry the dreams of those celebrating the fire festival toward the heavens, as Momo gently rests Onigashima down in the desolate wastelands surrounding the capital. Meanwhile, Kaido is seen spiraling downward into the abyss below, perhaps toward the same destination as the fallen Big Mom. And yet I remain unconvinced that the battle is over, for a multitude of reasons. There isn't much to be said here that I haven't brought up already over the past several weeks. As much as I'm happy we were finally granted some insight into Kaido's backstory, I still want to see more.
I want more. More? More, did you say?
Clearly, given the length of this review, we learned quite a bit about the King of Beasts, but just as important is everything Oda chose to leave out. We still don't really understand the roots of Kaido's motivation. We know what Kaido wants, but not why he wants it. The brief glimpse of young Kaido doesn't really illuminate this motivation, but does reinforce the fact that it was instilled in him from a very young age. This flashback was not done in Oda's usual style. Typically, he depicts a full event from a character's past, which shapes their present goals and worldview. Though we saw multiple points in Kaido's life, none of these events helped shape or impact him into who he is today. By that I mean to say his character is rather static throughout this entire flashback. Kaido was already convinced that strength is the paramount virtue from the time he was 10 years old, and ultimately the focus of this chapter is the fact that those vying for the title of Pirate King want to reshape the world. Kaido wants a world of constant war, and Luffy wants a world where no one goes hungry, which is of course easier said than done. But my point here is though we saw a series of events from Kaido's past, and we saw just how long he's advocated for this world of war, none of these events directly inspired Kaido's present goals. They only reinforced something he already believed. What remains is the question of inception. Where did the idea originate? The fact that he was already potentially working as a mercenary for the Vodka Kingdom, an ogre exploited for his strength by the humans surrounding him, only begs more questions about Kaido's backstory and the history of the Oni. Additionally, we still haven't seen Kaido's awakening, which is significant. I don't think it's at all likely Kaido has already been fighting in his awakened state, as some have suggested. Oda is well aware of the fact that he hasn't fully explained the rules of awakening to readers, and thus knows he hasn't equipped us to readily identify awakened powers. Accordingly, he's made it a point to explicitly announce whenever awakened abilities are being used, and no such distinction has been made for Kaido. Oda developed visual cues or shorthand for identifying usage of various types of haki over time, and he'll likely do the same for awakened devil fruit in the future. But at this point, without any formal statements made by Oda, Kaido almost certainly has not awakened. Importantly, as demonstrated by Luffy's new Nika powers, awakening isn't just about giving Kaido a new final form. There is real narrative and thematic significance to awakening which hasn't yet been fully realized, particularly for mythical zones. As the Elder stated, Zone Fruit have a will of their own, and Zunesha recognized Luffy as representing JoyBoy's return through the awakening of the Nika fruit. It's unclear why Kaido hasn't awakened his devil fruit yet, but I suggested in the chapter 1045 review that perhaps the answer lies in the question Kaido asked Luffy following the Nika fruit's awakening. Who are you? Implicit in this question is the idea that awakening could have turned Luffy into someone or something else. And maybe that's something Kaido doesn't want to risk for himself. What or who will Kaido become if his mythical fish fruit awakens? I've dedicated a substantial amount of time in my ongoing video series to explaining why I believe the mythical fish fruit is so important, but as I've hinted at and will soon explain in detail, beyond the powers this mythical zone bestows upon its wielder, I believe the mythical dragon is far more important than has yet been revealed. In fact, I believe this mythic dragon figure may have been hiding in plain sight for a long time, and that this legendary dragon may represent or channel the power of a being as important, if not more so, than the fabled warrior of liberation, sun god Nika. The identity and nature of this mythic dragon is central to my upcoming theory video, in which I explore the true history of the Void Century. But as a sort of preview, my assertion is that the mythical fish fruit is based at least in part on the mythological Japanese dragon god of the sea, Ryujin, and that within the One Piece world, this entity is or was deeply connected to the power of the sea itself, potentially even directing or characterizing the creation of the Grand Line at the end of the Age of Heaven, marked by the start of the Sea Circle calendar, Kaien Reki. Of course, there's a lot more to this theory which I'm not going to explain in depth in this video, but that's something you can look forward to in the not so distant future. Moving on, the next point I'll make here is that Toki's prophecy regarding 9 shadows cast by the moon on a night woven of 20 years also has yet to come to fruition. We don't fully know the meaning of this prophecy, but I still believe the true importance of the Akazaya Samurai hasn't yet been fully realized, and that they're still meant to play a pivotal role in fulfilling Odin's will by helping to open Wano's borders. On a related note, though the Fire Festival is drawing to a close, the skies above Wano are still dark. It's hard to imagine Oda concluding this arc without the real sunrise accompanying the arrival of the metaphorical prophesied New Dawn, which again leads me to believe the fight isn't really over. After all, Zunesha said it came to Wano to fight by Momo's side, and I don't imagine that means simply sweeping away a fleet of government ships. Zunesha needs something or someone to help fight against for its arrival at this particular juncture to be meaningful. The world government ships are going to arrive, because Wano's borders are opening. While the samurai may resist forced annexation, open borders means they will need to establish some type of relationship with the outside world, and that includes the world government. Further, the arrival of the Marines importantly serves as an analog to the arrival of Admiral Matthew Perry accompanying the real-world opening of Japan's borders at the start of the Meiji era. It's also interesting to note that despite Kaido's apparent defeat, we still didn't receive any of the in-story cues which marked the end of previous battles during the Onigashima raid. There hasn't yet been a chapter title following the nomenclature of chapters 1034, which is Sanji vs. Queen, 1035, which is Zoro vs. King, and 1038, Law and Kid vs. Big Mom. Now, of course, there was a Luffy vs. Kaido title back in the first act of Wano, so I'm not suggesting we would see that specific chapter title reused, but something in the same mold. There also wasn't a narration box formally announcing Luffy as the victor. This isn't something we saw for every single battle on Onigashima, but it was used for all of the important ones. This in itself isn't definitive proof that the battle will continue, but it does mean that we can't conclusively say that it's over. It's also interesting to note that Inbi and Apoo are still left standing. This is another topic I discussed previously, but it's interesting that Inbi, the first of the numbers, would be the ace in Kaido's playing card themed crew. I've suggested in the past that Inbi could provide an Ur-style battle for the Straw Hats and allies while Luffy finishes his fight against Kaido. While that seems more and more unlikely, particularly given the on-panel character traits demonstrated by Inbi, I think his cowardice and lack of intelligence, coupled with overwhelming physical strength and perhaps even a devil fruit ability, could fit the dual high card low card nature of the ace in a deck of playing cards. In any case, it's interesting and perhaps a bit conspicuous that although the battle has seemingly concluded, two of Kaido's subordinates remain undefeated, and makes me wonder what role they're meant to play. And again, I take this as a sign there's another phase to this battle remaining. Perhaps most significantly, it's important to remember that despite Kaido telling King that JoyBoy will be the one who defeats him, on a personal level, Kaido isn't looking to be defeated. He's looking for a place to die, because death completes a warrior, and that point hasn't yet been addressed one way or the other. The Akazaya samurai were intent on taking Kaido's head. Kaido told Yamato that his desire to rule over Wano is unrelenting, and we don't yet know why this particular nation is so important, though I will discuss that topic in depth in the last section of my ongoing Kaido video series. But the point here is that Kaido can't simply be knocked unconscious and left to his own devices. He won't go gently into the good night. The world government is going to arrive soon, and perhaps they'll arrest Kaido, but it seems Luffy sent him spiraling into some sort of underground abyss. Given that Big Mom also fell into the pit, I have to wonder if there's some aspect of Wano's mystery which will be revealed through the underground. Whether or not that's the case, with the fleet still offshore, there's nothing preventing Kaido from simply climbing back up. Perhaps from the rubble, awakened Kaido will emerge and prove too powerful for even awakened Gear 5 Luffy to face alone. And it's here we could see the intervention of the Akazaya Samurai, the 9 shadows from Toki's prophecy, providing Luffy the strength he needs in mortal, ghost, or even shadow form. As Crocodile said in Impel Down, awakened zone users don't stay down for long. Demonstrating this principle, Luffy has already had multiple miracle resurrections throughout the course of this battle, and I expect Kaido could be afforded at least one himself. I could continue listing reasons why I don't think the battle has reached its final conclusion yet, but I suspect this review is already way too long. I will again point out that Oda said in the 2017 interview that he believed Luffy simply overpowering Kaido by punching his way to victory would prove unsatisfying. He thus said he needed to devise another solution. Sure, plans change, and maybe Oda meant he had to give Luffy the multiple power-ups he received over the course of the raid, and to make the punch even bigger in order for it to be satisfying. But I still think Oda meant something else. Now, if you've been following my reviews, you'll know this scenario is pretty much exactly what I've been predicting. A false ending to the fight, leading to another major inflection point. And I suppose chapter 1050 will tell whether my suspicion is correct or not. Of course, for as sure as I feel that the fight isn't over, I do fully acknowledge that I could be incorrect, that Luffy has indeed defeated Kaido, the implications of which are potentially huge for the series moving forward. Exactly 10 years will have passed between the formation of Luffy and Law's alliance on Punk Hazard with the stated goal of taking down Kaido and chapter 1050, so perhaps Oda intends to mark that anniversary with Luffy being proclaimed the victor. Honestly, I don't think I can give a fair assessment at this point of how I feel about this as the culmination of the Wano arc, if the fight has indeed concluded with chapter 1049. I feel like I need a bit of distance to say what I think works well and where I think there could be some improvements. I'll reiterate what I said last week, that although I've been advocating for certain theories, they're ultimately just for fun. And while I do still think there's a very good chance there's more yet to be revealed, if those theories are disproven, my appreciation for the story Oda has chosen to tell won't be in any way diminished. So in that sense, this chapter is hard to evaluate in isolation. But right now, I'll say that I would be a bit concerned moving forward if Luffy has indeed claimed a solo victory against Kaido, largely based on the narration box accompanying Kaido's introduction in chapter 795, which describes him as the world's strongest living creature. Much of my theory video series has been predicated on the idea that although Kaido absolutely ranks among the world's strongest, a one-on-one good luck stat boost muddies the water, so to speak, by depriving Kaido of the one-on-one defeat and Brilliant Warrior's death he so desperately desires. If this theory proves true, it would mean that though Kaido ranks among the strongest, he cannot definitively claim the title of the world's strongest living creature. However, as I said, it's entirely possible my theory is incorrect. But if so, Kaido's reputation goes from rumor to fact, which would mean that by overpowering Kaido, Luffy could be considered the new strongest living creature in the One Piece world. This topic is way too big for this chapter review, but this could present a potential power scaling problem moving forward. Luffy hasn't always been presented as an underdog, but crowning him the King of Beasts would fundamentally shift the balance of power in the story and leave Luffy very little room for upward growth in the story arcs beyond Wano. While Teach fights dirty and has multiple devil fruit at his disposal, it's hard to imagine even as formidable adversaries as Shanks, Dragon, and the Admirals being considered credible threats capable of generating real narrative tension if Luffy is considered the undisputed world's strongest. Even in terms of devil fruit, we know Haki reigns supreme, and over the course of this battle, Luffy has upgraded not only his devil fruit, but also his Conqueror's Haki, to the extent that he matches Kaido. My point here being that if Luffy achieves a solo victory against Kaido, he's left with very few weaknesses. This would establish his devil fruit as one of, if not the strongest powers in the entire world, and he now has a high degree of mastery of his Conqueror's Haki. His newly awakened Nika powers put him on equal standing with someone considered to be the world's strongest living creature. So even if we consider Blackbeard could negate those abilities, Luffy's overwhelming Conqueror's Haki diffuses this threat as well. Luffy could become Superman with no kryptonite, or Batman with no Martha.
Save Martha!
This again wouldn't be a problem if Kaido wasn't said to be the absolute strongest, if he wasn't set at the top of the scale. Even if he ranked among the strongest, this victory would simply push Luffy into the upper echelon of warriors in the One Piece world, but it wouldn't make him the undisputed champion. Of course, there are plenty of ways Oda could alleviate this concern, and I'm still predicting another outcome to this battle on Wano. But as things stand now, I'm just a bit concerned. Absent the strongest creature alive descriptor, I might not consider it to be such a major narrative obstacle for Luffy to defeat an emperor one-on-one at this point in the story. But as things stand now, I think we're going to have to wait and see. I do appreciate the sentiment that the entire raid, culminating in the downfall of Kaido, Orochi, and Big Mom, could transpire without the people celebrating in the Flower Capital being aware that the raid was even happening, reinforcing the sentiment that this victory was sort of a dream. The people of Wano will wake to find they've been liberated overnight, without knowing the war to decide their freedom was even taking place. While I like this idea in theory, on panel I feel like it may have created a bit too much of a disconnect between the Fire Festival celebration and the Onigashima raid, particularly in that because the people of Wano remained blissfully unaware of the danger Onigashima presented, it was harder to create dramatic stakes or emotional tension during the latter portions of the raid. This is why, if there is another phase to the battle, I think it could take place in full view of the Flower Capital. To an extent, the people of Wano might even find it hard to believe that they've been liberated without witnessing it firsthand. We're at a point in the story where Luffy's victories cannot really be obscured or hidden. He's soon going to become the Pirate King, and the people of Wano are going to be important allies in extending the new dawn to the entire world. Luffy helping to drive out Kaido simply won't be as impactful unless they see it happen. I'm going to wait to see how things play out over the next several chapters, but if this turns out to be the end, perhaps I'll make a video looking back on the Wano arc as a whole, so that its relative narrative strengths and shortcomings can be evaluated with a bit more distance. Overall, I really enjoyed this chapter, particularly the glimpses of Kaido's backstory, but I also want to see more. I admit I'll be somewhat disappointed if the 4-page flashback from chapter 1049 is all we're going to learn about the world's so-called strongest living creature, but I remain confident Oda's going to show us more of Kaido's early life. There were a lot of really interesting details in this week's chapter, which reinforce ideas I brought up in prior theory videos, but I suppose chapter 1050 will prove me either very right or very wrong concerning the outcome of the battle. I will add that of course we could learn more about Kaido in the future, particularly through Yamato, so it's entirely possible we won't see more of Kaido's backstory within the Wano arc. But this leads me to one last point about the nature of this battle. I can honestly say, having read every major fight weekly since Water 7, this is the first time I've had this feeling that I can best describe as just incomplete. I'm not saying I don't like it, it just feels like there's something missing still, like we're still waiting for a crucial piece to fall into place. And personally, I believe it's centered on two factors: the importance of Kaido's devil fruit and the roots of his motivation, which bring forth his true, genuine emotions. For every other major villain, it's all on the line in the final clash, not just in terms of strength, but their dreams. As things stand, it seems like Luffy won because that's what heroes do, and he'll get as many power-ups, miraculously resurrect as many times as needed, and make his fist as big as possible for that to happen. And Kaido just falls when he's supposed to, like actors in a kabuki play. To be clear, I love the flashback that we got, and it was packed with a lot of really interesting details. But what's most interesting about Kaido's flashback in chapter 1049 is what it doesn't tell us. It doesn't tell us why is Kaido. Kaido was a static force throughout the flashback. At every phase of his life, from the age of 10 to the age of 59, he's been pursuing the same goal. But why? Who instilled these values in Kaido? A common facet of New World villains is an inversion of the mentor-mentee relationship. People like Arlong corrupted Hody, Treble corrupted Doflamingo, or at least made him worse. Higarushi corrupted Orochi, and Orochi then in turn corrupted Kanjuro. By age 10, Kaido was already a child mercenary, or a child soldier fighting for the Vodka Kingdom, a lone ogre surrounded by humans. At no point in Kaido's battle against Luffy did he express anywhere near the same level of heated emotion as he did in his battle against Yamato in chapter 1025. Ogres aren't meant to be friends with humans. His face was twisted into an evil demonic form as he bellowed these words to his daughter because they represent deep trauma which birthed the monster that is Kaido in the present. That's what we didn't get in this flashback, and I believe that's still coming, whether it's within Wano or not. But building on that point, the dramatic tension in Luffy and Kaido's battle derives entirely from the question of what it means to be JoyBoy, which yes is tied to Wano, but we don't really know why yet. We know Luffy is fighting to open the borders because that's something Oden wanted to accomplish, because it means freeing the people of Wano. But we don't know why it's so important for Kaido to hold this particular country. Why this place? What makes it so special? Kaido's dialogue to Luffy is dispassionate, almost analytic, analyzing whether or not Luffy's fit to be JoyBoy. Compare this to his battle with Yamato, which was far more emotionally charged. That's the type of passion I would have expected to see in the final clash between Luffy and Kaido, because it's not just about who's stronger, they're putting their dreams on the line. But Kaido only let his real emotions bubble to the surface while he was under the influence and when he fought against Yamato. And that's again why I don't think it's over quite yet. Kaido said his desire to rule Wano is unrelenting. And just as Luffy climbed back up as many times as needed to topple Kaido, Kaido will climb back up as many times as necessary to maintain his hold on Wano. I do want to stress here that as much as I believe the battle will continue, I think it's going to take a very different shape from what we've seen thus far. I think this false victory could be a major inflection point, transitioning us into a completely new phase. One which will not take as long as the raid on Onigashima, but will nevertheless be a different type of battle from what we've seen thus far. I'm going to make a full video on this topic, so I won't go into too much depth here. But if I were to make a prediction, I'd say we could even see a title card announcing Luffy as the victor at the start of next week's chapter to further cement the false sense of security. Maybe we'll even see the start of a celebration in the Flower Capital. Now, I'm not saying any of this for certain, but if Kaido does re-emerge in an awakened, even more powerful state, I don't think Luffy's going to take him down alone. I think he's going to need help. And this is where Toki's prophecy of 9 shadows cast by the moon on a night woven of 20 years enters into the picture. As I will soon discuss in depth, I think it could be the combined efforts of Luffy and the Akazaya Samurai which ultimately delivers the new dawn to Wano. That's all for this week's chapter review. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please leave a like. If you want to be notified when future videos are posted, please consider subscribing, and remember to hit the bell icon to turn on notifications. It really helps this channel grow, and I really appreciate your support. But most important, what did you think about this week's chapter? Do you think Kaido is down for good, or will he climb back up to go another round? Make sure you let me know your thoughts down in the comments.